G'day, folks. Welcome back to another episode of The Jug Show. So, today we're going to part 3 of our discussion of the X-Men from the Ashes. So, today we're going full X-Men. And I mean full X-Men. As in, we're using Gail Simone's Uncanny X-Men and Jed MacKay's, well, just X-Men. Okay, so, honestly, both of these have their ups and downs for me. Like, there are things I'm very invested in, but there are things that's almost causing me to drop the books. Or sometimes could even just make me lose focus. And I find that a bit weird, especially when it comes to Jed MacKay, because I don't really love his stuff, but some of the stuff from his book, well, if I'm actually going to talk honestly, I'm going to keep going for a little bit longer on the both of them. It's not because I don't have faith in the writers, but I also have to take into consideration that when the writers started writing the books for the From the Ashes, the actual writers didn't know how Krakoa was going to end. So a lot of the books, especially in the first arcs, are going to be a bit stumbly and going to be sometimes even a bit confusing because they have no idea what actually happened. That Krakoa went to the White Hot Room. They just probably knew that Krakoa was going to end and all the mutants were going to be coming back onto the mainland. So both of these books have something very interesting. But at the same time, they also have things that are like putting me off a little bit or just making me lose a sense of interest. I want to start with Uncanny X-Men. Out of the two, this one is a little bit on the harder side to read for me personally, but at the same time, I actually do like some of the general atmosphere of the book. What I really like is it's not just simply a back to basics. It's also more of it's a more familial book. It's one that is more centered around the concepts of family. So they go into Louisiana. We're just living into this guy's house, a old friend of Gambit, and we have like these. It's a very classic family kind of setup. Like we got the rules, we got everyone doing chores. It's a very classic trope of when a character probably usually loses everything and they kind of they go to a family member and they end up like learning like relearning a few things like trusting somebody again, trusting people again, uh, managing to live without what they have lost. And Gail doesn't do too bad. And actually, like, I really get the vibe that she's going for, and I actually do kind of enjoy it. Because, like, what I really like about it, especially when they're in their bit of a brighter moods, when they're actually really enjoying each other's company, it actually gives a big sense of hope that things can get better after a Krakoa. Even with the whole with that kid that died in the start, the ex Charlie, I think his name was. Even though he started a bit solemn, it really feels like it can actually get better, especially with these kids. Now, while they've had a rough go of it, the X-Men are trying to make things a bit easier on them. But the tricky part is the fact that one of the harsher parts about this book, one of my harsher critiques, is that it feels like it's trying to capture some storylines that we already have seen of the X-Men, but it's kind of going the wrong way. With these new characters, these 4 new characters, I feel like there's a little bit of an opportunity to actually really start exploring what's new about this era. But like I said before, Gale didn't know how Krakoa was going to end. It probably wasn't only until recently that the writers knew that while Krakoa was going, they actually didn't know how it was, like where it was going to go. And it was only just until recently she knew that it wasn't going to be destroyed. So that's why in a recent panel she included the idea that Krakoa still lives. So that's actually so that's something that she has on some other people. she's actually talking about like things that happen. A bit of like Krakoa actually is still around. There's still a sense of hope. And what's really good is that can actually break through the way she's writing horror. This new character, this ex-girlfriend of Charles Xavier, this brand new horror character, she is really upping the tension. This is something that I was really enjoying. I don't know how, what it is, but Gale really nails the horror sense. Like, I really think that she should try writing a horror book or one that has more horror intensity around it. Maybe she should try going for a ghostwriter. Who knows? She might come up with something good. So, some of the dialogue and some of the scenes, some of the ways the characters talk to each other, some of the ways like their interactions can actually. This is one of the downsides. Like sometimes it can seem a little bit hollow, and like sometimes I feel like the characters are saying things that they wouldn't say. Like I don't feel like she 100% gets the characters, and probably only wants to work with a certain few, and picked up the rest because like part of me feels like maybe she didn't want to use Wolverine, but she felt like she had to, or like that was an editorial mandate. For starters, he hasn't even really been big in the books. He's actually just been the guy that's, not only is he just there, he's the one that keeps causing trouble. He's the one that's like getting all the angst. While I feel like she's rather focused on Rogue and Gambit. Now, this is still early in the run, so I'm not exactly 100% sure where the book is going to go. And like I said, it's only going to be until recently that we're actually going to understand where the writers are with understanding of what happened with the last era. So it's only going to be just relatively recent that they're probably going to start bringing it up. They're going to talk about it. A bit of a problem I'm actually am having with this book when it comes to some of the dialogue is that they actually, it's like they're calling each other names or coming up with these ideas that honestly they're not hitting. It doesn't have a sense of emotional substance. And she's trying to get to positions with these characters that normally would take like a lot longer to actually get to. Like when it came to the new girl Kaliko, and with her accepting the fact she's a mutant, the problem with that scenario is that that kind of acceptance of a person's self, especially after years and years of pushing this side of yourself down, doesn't just take a single encouraging speech to get past. This requires years and years of work and therapy to get past, especially with how this particular character actually is even looking at and treating other people, mainly focusing on her upbringing. So, one of the main issues, and as well as these characters, like some of these characters, the way they're talking to another character, the way, like, even like Wolverine calling this kid the manga kid, some of her dialogue is definitely falling flat and really should be. Like, I really think that sometimes she really should just take a step back, have a good think about what she's saying, and maybe even really push a little bit more of some senses of emotional intensity. Some of like I said, some of the things is a little bit more interesting, but like I said, it could use a little bit more. And I feel like she's kind of going for the lesser, like she's trying to go for some shock things, and not really trying to build anything new on some of the characters, and just kind of going in the wrong direction for a lot of them. Like this call out here of Rogue telling Wolverine he has PTSD. One thing I do kind of appreciate, the fact is that I feel like Gale thought it was a good idea, probably because he's calling it out. And I don't think it's actually been called out, like put words put to it before. But saying Wolverine has PTSD is like calling Nightcrawler blue. Like it's a little bit on the obvious side for some people, and it's been obvious for Wolverine for a long time. The problem, the fact is, it hasn't been him not acknowledging he has PTSD. It's him acknowledging he needs to do something differently. It's kind of like he's accepted the fact he has it, but doesn't want to do anything about it. That's the actual issue. So, but the thing also with Gale is just the scenario she put in the X Men in, like the horror aspect, the this the Mayan god here giving Gambit the other eye of Agamotto. I just really hope she starts talking about some of the more eventful stuff that happened on Krakoa and start revolving some of the stories about trying to recover from what's happened. I really hope that's where we go after the raid of Greymalkin. And after reading the latest issue with the raid on Greymalkin, I feel like she's fallen into the same problems when writing a hero versus hero trope when it comes to a hero team versus hero team. I'm gonna do a video on the hero versus hero trope later down the line because this is actually one of my favorite storylines, story tropes. The problem is, especially when it comes to hero team versus hero team, is that it requires both sides to look at the other one in the sense that they're unreasonable. And the problem with that is that on either side, you have so many people, but they're all sharing the same opinion of their side. You don't have people thinking, okay, maybe they have a point, or maybe they have a point. And the writer is always forced to make one seem more unreasonable than the other, so that person can be right, which causes even more problems because it makes the other characters act out of character. So she's not creating the actual tension. She's manufacturing what could be artificial characterization because she needs this level of tension, she needs this level of conflict. Even though that it would actually make more sense if Cyclops actually did get in contact with Rogue and actually came up with more of a plan. He's a strategist. That's what he would do. He wouldn't ask her to back off. So this is the tricky part. And one of the things, though, I am glad about the raid on Greymalkin is that we're getting it out of the way. We don't know how long Jed and Gale are going to be on these books, and it really feels like some of these writers are getting annoying stories that we all felt like was going to happen out of the way. This is probably why. This is probably why we're doing a bit of a X-Men versus X-Men thing. They probably thought some readers were going to expect it, so they're just doing it now. Don't have to deal with it later. I've kind of felt like that from some other books too. In fact, I'm not going to get into it. So this is something I am appreciating, and I feel like this week this is the only time we're actually going to see them fight. This was the only fight thing. The bad stuff's out of the way, so now we can get focused on the actual raid. So we're going to do that. So to put it plainly, Uncanny. I like the setting. I like the atmosphere. I like Kurt. I like Rogue and Gambit, but I feel like there are a few problems there too. It feels kind of like when you got a home. You buy your first house. It looks a bit shabby, but when you knock on the walls, you feel the structure is nice and strong, and it's got good bones. So it feels like it can get better. And I know Gail can actually do good books. I really liked her Jessica Jones book. But the problem is there were some books that really fell flat with me. And honestly, I'm really hoping that it does get good. I hope it does improve. I hope as time goes on, it does improve because she gets more of the setup. She actually knows what happened previously, and we can start creating a more direct flow. So I still have my fingers crossed for it, but there's a good chance I'm probably going to drop the book and maybe wait for the next Gale thing. So moving on, we're talking Jed MacKay here. Now, if I was actually had to pick out of the two, Jed MacKay is definitely one of my more favorite writers. I put him up there with writers including Eve Ewing and Ryan North. What's amazing about Jed is that he can actually really cut to the core of a character and make it sound very natural. He doesn't have to over-explain all these things. Because sometimes you got writers that really can sometimes talk about a character, say all these things, but it really feels like they're dodging the actual core of what the character is, or they're just explaining and they're just over explaining it. Jed kind of cuts away from that, says what the character is, what they've been through, and really hones in on what makes his character special. We've seen it in his Moon Knight with several characters, including not just Moon Knight himself or his three personalities, but also with Tigra, with Soldier, with Reese. Really enjoying that, and we've seen it in his Avengers. He does get the personality of the event of most of the Avengers. A bit of a problem with his Avengers is it's weird. Like, I feel like we've gotten way off course on his Avengers. I feel like we're not focused on the things that we were originally supposed to focus on. I think he might have gotten more books. Like, they might have approved more books than he was expecting. So we're just waiting until he gets back on track, and I hope that soon. But yeah, anyway, back to his X-Men. I'm really enjoying his characterizations of what he's doing here. Like, with his Magneto, like this was like the most Magneto-y Magneto I've actually read in a while. Like, I get Al Ewing's was also pretty good. Like, I'm not going to deny that it is, but there's something about Jed's one that actually feels more intense. Like, you can actually feel that this is an old man that has been fighting for so long. Like, something about the way Jed's writing him, you can feel the age of the character himself. I don't know why he's in the wheelchair, and when it comes to the whole mutant resurrection disease, I get the feeling that's a red herring. I don't think that's true. We're not seeing that with any other characters. The last time Magneto got resurrected, it wasn't through the resurrection protocols. And especially now, given the fact that the resurrection is continuing on Krakoa in the White Hot Room, and they went for like 15 years without an issue, I don't think that this is an actual thing. I get the feeling that Jed's got another idea up his sleeve. I think he's going to have something a lot better. And when it comes to his characterizations, I'm very interested in his Scott. I really like the fact he's noting that Scott's really feeling the pressure now, because we've never really seen him like when he's feeling this pressured. Like, we've seen him under pressure and him getting like he's starting to snap, but it's never like this. It really feels like his legs are coming out from under him now. Normally, he'd either get angry or maybe he'd start resorting to like base pleasures like he would with Emma Frost. But now he's really just trying to hold it together, and it's really focusing on some of his own issues that have pretty much been avoided by so many writers in the past. So really enjoying that. One of my favorite moments, though, was actually with Edie, or Edie. I'm not sure how to pronounce her name, but Temper, as known currently as Temper. She's definitely the one to look on to in this particular book. I'm very fascinated with her, and I really appreciate it because, well, I'm not a fan of Iceman. I'm really liking her development currently in this book. She's being pushed forward, and she's the character that I think Jed has the most interest in. One of the bigger moments is when she starts talking with Magneto and kind of calling him out a little bit because of like his involvement in Krakoa and like being she was the one, like she was in Sabretooth and she was put in prison. And I really like the fact that she actually states she doesn't miss Krakoa because she has her reasons to. One of the reasons I like it is because in so many other books, it's like everyone's missing this big thing, but you say to yourself, there was this, and there was this. So why is everyone missing it? So the fact that we have Temper saying that she's not actually missing it is actually really, really good. It's adding a lot more to the dimensions of what's happening after Krakoa. We're seeing that even in the new Wolverine book. Just one issue, and it's actually caught my eye. I'm really looking forward to issue 2 for that. So continuing with Jed, I'm very interested in this book, but at the same time, it's feeling a little slow. Like, yeah, well, now we're on the raid at Greymalkin, but honestly, I might actually, but I'm not really interested in this raid because I got to be honest, it's actually not really one of the more interesting aspects of it. I'm more interested in going back to the characters, really focusing and honing in what we're doing here. Honestly, I feel like the raid of Greymalkin might have been an editorial decision, trying to make this a prison, trying to create a sense of tension now that without Krakoa, mutants are now at each other's throats. And it's not something I'm actually enjoying. So honestly, I don't think it's the writer's faults when it comes to these particular books. I feel like they have to do certain things because some other people think it might be a better idea to create this, to think that might be better tension. This is one of the reasons I actually appreciate the current Storm book. It seems to have more freedom. Like, she's going all over the place and she has her own thing to do. These ones, they still feel like they're being controlled by somebody. And the fact is, Jed and Gale had to work together on this particular one, so they have to have a sense of collaboration. So it's one of the trickiest scenarios. So I'm not going to say either one of these books are really horrible or anything. Like, I'm not going to compare them to X Factor because both of them actually do have some form of merit. There is a level of interest. It might even get better as it goes. It probably will get better as it goes. One of the things that even caught my eye is that finally somebody actually brought up Jubilee's kid Shogo. I get the idea of him being a dragon in Otherworld, but why did, like, for 2 years, did everybody just forget about it? That is something I really appreciate when it comes to Gale. Hui. So the fact is, when it comes to these books, my interest is holding, but unless something shifts, and part of me is expecting it to shift soon, I might end up dropping the books. And I really don't want to. Because there is something in them that is catching my fancy. So I really hope that post Raid on Greymalkin, something improves, something changes. And I'm really looking forward to that, especially in Jed's X-Men. There's such a level of intensity in that book that I really don't want to drop it, but I don't like forcing myself to read comics just to get to where I think something will happen. I did that before and it actually caused a lot of problems for me. So I don't want to do that again. So, and I won't drop it forever. I just might wait to hear something. So, wrapping it up, these are interesting books. I can see that the writers have these ideas behind it. When it comes to Gale, I really like her horror ideas behind it, and especially with the setting in Louisiana. It definitely has a good setup for it, and I really hope that she continues with a more sense of horror. I never knew, but she actually has a bit of a knack for it. I mean, that character was a bit on the scary side. Like Haunted Woods, I feel like that would be in a wheelhouse. And when it comes to Jed, I'm really loving the emotional intensity of it all. I'm really looking forward to more. I mean, especially with what he did with the Avengers versus X-Men issue. Anyone with a brain could have told that there was not gonna be that big of a deal. Although I did find it funny how after reading that preview several times, I didn't notice that the sword on Magic's back was actually a bat. I'm still laughing about that. But I'm looking forward to what he has planned for the future. So, next week, we are going to be talking about the villains in the stories, focusing on Mystique and the Sentinels book. Both caught my interest. I actually do enjoy Mystique. Sentinels is a bit on the fence for me, but its premise is interesting. But you can hear more about it next week. Thanks for tuning in. I'm finally going to say it this time. Please leave a like and subscribe if you're enjoying the videos. I'll see you next week. Bye!